What's up, everybody? Welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the Squad Dev Q&A. So if you want to learn more about the future development of Squad, this is the opportunity to get some insights from OWI themselves based on questions asked from the community. So we're going to take a look at that, and I'm going to give some of my overall thoughts. But if you have thoughts, you should throw them down in the comments below, because I'm going to work on another video here soon that might talk a little bit more about what I see for the future of Squad. So if you want to be able to catch that, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and again, drop a comment down below, and let's get to it. Now, this Q&A is pretty straightforward. They picked 10 questions to answer, and I think there's some interesting tidbits in here that we can get kind of excited about. So the first question is, how long does OWI intend to develop Squad? Unreal Engine 4 is starting to show its age. What are the plans for continued development? Will this ever be upgraded to Unreal 5 or another engine? Now, for the first part of that, OWI responded with, there is no end in sight for Squad's development. That should be a satisfying answer, because I don't see an end in sight either, especially with some of the adjustments and bigger updates they've made recently. Now, based on what they're saying, they do have a lot planned and in store for Squad, including new features, content, and game modes, which is kind of an interesting thing at the end. What game modes might they be able to add to Squad? That would be something I'm looking forward to. But I assume that is a much longer term type of addition to make to the game, as well as going to Unreal 5. From what I've seen of Unreal 5, it's extremely impressive. I don't know what that takes to switch over to an upgraded engine. I know it's been done in recent memory in Squad's lifespan, but I'd be super curious about what that process looks like for Unreal 5, and that's something that's actually tangible for Squad. I assume that it would come with some improvements to the engine itself, but also maybe some additional options or new features that we could see implemented on some of our maps and things like that. The second question asked was, would you consider hiring a workshop mod developer contract to reach your achievements? Now, already off the bat, I know that this has already been a thing that OWI does. In fact, the Australian Defence Force was a mod. I believe that was made by Midnight Interactive. OWI acquired that and implemented it into the game. Now, they may make changes or additions, or they may take what the modders create and polish it up and tweak it based on what OWI sees fit. But still, they will lean on modders and what they create to help implement new things into the game. I think this is also true for some maps that are incorporated into Squad. Now, for OWI's answer, they say, we are currently in contact with a few modding teams and individual modders to help us with various areas of development. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that modders should always be incorporated if possible for any game. I'm a little bit of a modder maximalist. I want to see what they can create, because I think they can also give outside perspective for what a game might need based on what the community is looking for. It can also easily expand the development team by utilizing and working with modders. So that's pretty cool. The next question is, what is an area of the game you're looking to address next? What problem with the game flow is looking to be solved, if anything? Now, this is an important question. We always want to know where the dev's head is in terms of what they want to alter, fix, or adjust, or add to the game. And I was excited to see the answer OWI provided, which is, we're looking at addressing pain points for new players, including closing the game loop off and more detailed feedback from players, which I think is really important, because that feedback can be used for newer players, especially to gain information and understanding of how the game operates. Additionally, they go on to say, this will allow them to see how the overall team did as a whole, where ticket losses and gains were, as well as onboarding new players more easily into the experience. We plan on working on it over the next year, with each update hopefully including something pushing us closer to this goal. I think the feedback players could gain by just seeing where tickets are lost would be significant, because there's a lot of times after rounds, you'll hear somebody just blaming the armor. In some cases, that could be true if you're just losing a bunch of armor fights. Some folks might blame it on fob losses, but it would be really good to see tangible feedback, because there are times where it's just generally people giving up that help you lose a game. Or it is those fob losses and armor losses and vehicle losses overall, especially if you have a bunch of abandoned vehicles everywhere. That stuff can add up. And I think this is important, because I think it'll help teach players what's valuable in the game. But we'll touch more on this in just a second with another question that was asked. Next up, when will thermal sights and laser rangefinders be added for MBTs and IFEs? The answer is, thermal optics are something that we would like to add in the future. However, we can't commit to timelines due to limitations with resources and tech. We would wish for a thermal sight to not only look and feel authentic, but to work realistically, rather than be a post-process effect. Laser rangefinders are already present in some IFEs and all tanks. Now, I don't think this is one of the better questions out of the 10 by any means. In fact, thermal imaging is cool, rangefinders are already there, but it doesn't tell us a lot with regards to what might be on the way in the near future. In fact, I would have much rather had a question like this, but framed around, will there be an overhaul for vehicles in the future? The next question, though, is another important one, which is, can we see more tutorials in the future? I'm thinking of a basic SL guide on how to make fobs and call command strikes, basic vehicle gunnery tutorial, dedicated AT tutorial. Now, right off the bat, I think this is a really significant question because it's something I've heard a lot about lately. Folks wanting more training in place for new players, especially with the unit voting system implemented. That's largely because when you pick a unit type, it may make certain roles significantly more important. And if newer players are getting those without proper training, it could be a messy round. So OWI says, yes, we plan on completely reworking our tutorial into a set of shorter tutorials that cover a wide variety of topics. Beginning with the basics and moving into more advanced areas of topics, we also plan to add more tools for players to have better visibility on information that is currently hidden or considered tribal knowledge. Our goal with this is to have players be able to search for this information more easily from within game. Now, along with what they said was one of their main focuses being closing off that game loop and providing feedback, I think this is really significant because it seems like there's more stuff catering to some of the newer players to get them up to speed and give them information that is important for their ability to learn Squad. So it kind of works hand in hand. If you have tutorials to teach you how to do certain things, and then you have the feedback per round that can give you information on what's happening, I think players are going to start making big advances in terms of just game knowledge. You also want Squad to grow. You need it to be pulling new members into this community. And one way of doing that is making the game more approachable from an education perspective. So I think this is huge. So the next thing on our list is, does the dev team have plans for any kind of player progression? The answer is we have no plans at this time for a traditional progression system, but we do have a plan on adding a socially driven progression system that allows players to recognize each other for their contributions. More on this in an upcoming communication. Now, based on the last sentence, it seems like this might be something that isn't as far away as maybe some of the other answers. However, I'm not really sure what a player progression system would add to Squad beyond maybe some cosmetic stuff or some sort of ranking that really didn't play out in game. So I don't really know if it's that useful. On the flip side, the socially driven system seems interesting. I know that there are games where you can sort of commend somebody else for their working around. I don't know if that gives you XP or whatever. For this, I'm not sure what the reward would be, how they would factor that in to what you're doing within the Squad framework, but I think that's kind of an interesting thing to consider. Next up is a fun question for me to actually get to see because I've played Commander so much in the past, and that is, any plans to bring in new Commander assets? The answer is we are in the process of adding new Commander assets, and in the future we plan to completely rework the current Commander system up to a higher standard. That also leans into the asymmetric design of different factions and units within those factions. I'm most curious to see how they plan to completely rework the current Commander system up to a higher standard. Like, what all could be included in that beyond just adding or removing some assets or making them fit more with the unit types. Part of me wonders if they might actually redo or change how getting Commander roles operate. But I also feel like this may be more involved in just the process of getting to that role. So very curious what might be in store for Commanders moving forward. I also think that adjusting what assets Commanders have just makes sense given the unit types, because now you have a little bit more diversity in different unit types, stuff like that. So Commanders may have certain abilities based on what is available to those units. Next up is, how far along the pipeline is the tow launcher rework? OWI responds with, we are in the process of reworking our missile system in-game to be more authentic, as well as more flexible, with the intent to enable us to add more types of missile systems in the future. We will have more to share on this topic in the coming months. I think the big part of this right now is the fact that they have more missile systems they'd like to add in the future. What could that be? Are we going to see missile systems for some of the conventional factions like the US Army, beyond just something like having a grad available to the IMF? I think this is a really kind of interesting thing to see, because I do think to some capacity, we are going to see some adjustments to some of that indirect fire that happens in game and can be incredibly effective. Now, the last question as a part of this Q&A is, are you going to balance the factions with the upcoming voting system so it doesn't become too one-sided? OWI gave this reply. Yes, faction balancing will be an ongoing iterative process using data points from analytics, as well as feedback and observations. We want to make sure every faction feels fun to play and no one gets left behind with the voting system. This feels more like an obvious acknowledgement that there needs to be some polish and tweaks given to some of the units and some of the balancing. I'm not surprised by this answer. In fact, I kind of figured that OWI was still going to be in the process of tweaking this for quite a while, just to make sure every faction and unit type specifically had their opportunity to shine, because of course these are asymmetrical fights, and with the unit system, it can actually make that more drastic. If you go back to my video on map voting and the effect it has on squad, there's definitely instances where the map voting system is really affecting how rounds are played. In fact, one thing that I've noticed, especially in that video, was that logistics just are something that tends to get forgotten. And that happens just based off the unit type selected for whatever sort of round or game mode and map you are playing on. For example, if you have all armored logistics vehicles versus vehicles that are much faster, you could be at a big disadvantage from that standpoint and have to make that up somewhere else. And that's not something everyone is educated on or prepared to make those sort of decisions when the map voting process starts. So they may pick something that seems more fun or more exciting because there's more armored vehicles at the cost of something like logistics speed or just logistics in general. It's a interesting thing that's happening during rounds, and I'm interested to see how OWI can address some of those things over the longer term. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I wanted to cover this because I think it's an interesting subject matter to see what's coming in for this game that has seen some significant updates over the last several months. And this gives me a little bit more information and fuel towards a video talking about what we could expect from Squad in the future. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can see when that video releases. Hit the like button, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the Q&A, and I'll catch you next time.